In the autumn of 1347, as the bustling port city of Messina awoke to the familiar sounds of commerce and seafaring, something unseen slipped ashore. Galleys arrived from the east, their sails heavy with goods, their hulls with silence. The crews, once lively and weathered by trade, now lay sprawled across wooden decks and in darkened quarters, feverish or already still. Their flesh was mottled with necrotic spots, their bodies marked by bulbous, black swellings that leaked blood and pus. Frantic port authorities, horrified by what they witnessed, ordered the vessels away, but an invisible foe had already made landfall. What neither the merchants nor the healers could know was that they were witnessing the first act of an unparalleled catastrophe. The enemy was not a demon nor a spirit as many believed, but a microscopic creature beyond the reach of medieval understanding. Yersinia pestis. This bacterium, born by fleas hidden in rats' fur, was about to orchestrate the most devastating pandemic in recorded history, the Black Death. For centuries, humanity's battles were waged with sword and spear, but this conflict played out on a molecular battlefield, one invisible to the naked eye. As the sailors suffered, so too would farmers, priests, nobles, and beggars. The plague would not discriminate. Over the next 5 years, this tiny bacterium swept inexorably across Europe, trailing its legacy of horror and grief from the Mediterranean coasts to the fog-bound north. By the time its fury waned, between 75 and 200 million people had perished, more than half the population of Europe. To comprehend this magnitude, imagine the world today losing nearly 5 billion people in less than a decade. The terror of Yersinia pestis was not solely in its mortality rate, but in its design, evolved over millennia to overcome biology's defenses. The siege began with a single bite. An infected flea, seeking a new host as its rat population died, would land on exposed human skin. In its quest for a blood meal, the flea regurgitated thousands of bacteria into the wound. That was the opening salvo. Inside the human body, Yersinia pestis acted with ruthless precision. While most bacteria must circumvent a barrage of immune defenses, this one came equipped with a protein called YOPJ, a biochemical disruptor. Like a skilled saboteur, YOPJ disabled chemical signals that would call the body's immune forces to arms. The host's defenses were blinded, their response fatally delayed, as the invader multiplied exponentially. The next destination was the lymphatic system, the body's internal sentinels against infection. But instead of being destroyed, the bacteria converted lymph nodes into flourishing colonies of replication. Swollen, inflamed, and darkened by hemorrhaging, these nodes, buboes, proclaimed to the world the signature mark of bubonic plague. Within 2 to 5 days, agony followed. Victims suffered sudden, intense fever and chills. Their bodies erupted in pain as the infected nodes grew to the size of eggs, sometimes rupturing and turning necrotic. Bloodstreams became highways for further invasion, leading to septicemic plague, where bacteria overwhelmed organs with such speed that victims sometimes succumbed before clear symptoms emerged. Yet the Black Death's most fearful trait was its adaptability. It could kill in 3 distinct ways: bubonic, via flea bite; septicemic, through direct bloodstream infection; and pneumonic when it invaded the lungs. Pneumonic plague was especially formidable. It could leap from person to person through microscopic droplets in coughs or sneezes. Imagine a disease spreading like influenza, but killing over 90% of those it infects within days. 1 pathogen, 3 vectors. There was no safe harbor. If the bacterium was a perfect predator, Europe's towns and cities were its prey, densely packed, poorly defended, and unwittingly complicit in the bacterium's reproduction. Medieval streets teemed with garbage and human waste. Rudimentary drainage left alleys reeking and water supplies tainted. Rats and their fleas thrived in the chaos, weaving silently through the straw-thatched homes and marketplace stalls. Families crowded together in single rooms, entire districts sometimes living under one leaking roof. Doors and walls stood little chance against starving fleas in search of new blood. Washing and sanitation, cornerstones of modern hygiene, were virtually unknown. Many believed that bathing opened the pores to dangerous miasmatic air. Lice and other parasites abounded. Medicine, desperately needed, was no match for the onslaught. Physicians, rooted in ancient Greco-Roman theories of bodily humors, prescribed herbal infusions, bloodletting, or simply prayer. Some donned strange, beaked masks filled with aromatic herbs in an attempt to ward off the deadly air, but their efforts were futile. In many areas, healers fled, refusing to enter plague homes, leaving the sick untended. Adding fuel to the fire were the vast trade networks linking Europe, Asia, and Africa. Commerce moved relentlessly along caravan roads, rivers, and sea lanes, carrying not just spices and silk, but also the plague. Each bustling port and market became a new epicenter, and within months the pandemic raced across entire continents. The social and psychological toll was staggering. Communities unraveled. In some villages, the death toll approached annihilation. Fields went unharvested. Cattle wandered untended. Churches stood empty except for funerals. Mass graves, pits dug in haste and filled beyond capacity, became grim monuments to the dead. Survivors despaired not just for their loved ones, but for the collapse of order itself. The response, driven by fear and incomprehension, was often cruel. Religious fervor flared. Groups of flagellants, convinced the disaster was punishment from God, roamed from town to town, whipping themselves and calling for repentance. Desperate for explanations, people blamed minorities, especially Jewish communities, who were massacred throughout Europe, accused without cause of poisoning wells or conspiring against their neighbors. And yet, from the devastation rose strange opportunities for transformation. With so many dead, labor became precious. The surviving workers could demand higher wages, better living conditions, and new freedoms from landowners previously secure in their authority. The old feudal order began to crumble. In its place, new social dynamics emerged, setting the stage for the modern age. In the centuries since, Yersinia pestis has never truly disappeared. Modern science has armed humanity with antibiotics, shrinking the plague's fatality rate to under 10% when treated rapidly. Yet the bacterium still circulates in wild rodent populations in places like Madagascar and the American Southwest, infecting about 650 people worldwide each year. Ancient DNA analysis confirms that the strain terrorizing medieval Europe lingers on. Remarkably, the Black Death also changed us. Genetic studies show that survivors passed on genes that conferred resistance, a gift and a curse, as some traits linked to plague resistance may, paradoxically, increase the risk for modern autoimmune diseases. The lesson endures. The Black Death was not just a medieval tragedy, it was a warning. Civilization, for all its progress, will always be vulnerable to small but powerful threats. In an age of antibiotic resistance and global connectivity, remembering how an invisible killer once reshaped human history is not just fascination, it is preparedness. The world remains a place where, at any moment, history could repeat itself. If you enjoyed this historical journey, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to click the bell icon.